Postcards from a Dying World, the podcast. For more than a decade, I've reviewed over 1,000 books that are mostly science fiction, horror, and bizarro. This feed will feature bonus audio I have produced over the years, as well as a monthly digest of reviews based on what I've read each month, plus the occasional bonus material about my own fiction. Thanks for listening.
Hello and welcome to Postcards from a Dying World for the second of my official Star Trek. I thought it was going to be a season-ending episode, but now it's a mid-season. I didn't realize that Prodigy was only half a season at 10, that they're coming back. But anyways, this is the mid-season Star Trek Prodigy panel. And returning from both from our Lower Decks episodes. And now I reached out to some pretty big names in the Star Trek community, and none of them have watched Prodigy, and it really disturbed me. One had watched the pilot and loved it, but didn't go back and finish it yet. Now that hurts. I'm not going to name names, but these are like actual Star Trek authors and people that.
What do they have better to do right now? It's the dead of winter. There's still the pandemic floating around out there.
I don't know, but anyways, speaking second is Sara Lynn Michener, who you might remember from our Lower Decks panel. Sara is one of my favorite Star Trek nerds to call upon for discussing all things Star Trek. And also one of my favorite Star Trek friends, Issa Diao, who is the lead vocalist of Good Clean Fun, a writer, director, creator, business owner, all that stuff. And Issa, who, if you guys recall on the Lower Decks episode, said he hates cartoons. So I almost did.
That is a misquote. There are things about cartoons that I don't.
You hate Star Trek cartoons.
I didn't say that. Everyone can go back and watch and hear for themselves the nuance to what I actually said. But that's fine. For podcast promotion, we can just say I hate cartoons.
Now, you're a Star Wars guy too. Have you watched Clone Wars, Bad Batch, any of that?
I haven't. So I'm a Star Wars guy in the sense that I really like the original movies when I was a kid. That's like the extent of my Star Warsism. I mean, I never had the toys. I didn't really care for the prequels. In fact, I really didn't like the prequels. And I
feel like that makes you a Star Wars person, though, because in order to be a self-respecting Star Wars person, you have to hate the prequels.
I guess that's a good point. So I'm not doing a good job of describing myself as a non-Star Wars person. But I thought the new movies were okay. I weren't like my favorite movies ever. I read a couple of the books, like the Thrawn series and a couple others. But I'm like a low-key Star Wars fan.
Yeah, I prefer Star Trek to Star Wars, but I am a Star Wars nerd, and I will say I will take any of the 3 prequels over Rise of Skywalker any day of the week.
Yeah, go watch the first movie like 5 times in a row. Good luck. You'd definitely rather watch Rise of Skywalker 5 times in a row.
No, I don't know. You think Phantom Menace is the worst movie? Oh no, I would take that debate in a long time. But anyways, that's not what we're here to talk about today. I actually went back and saw Phantom Menace in the theater multiple times. I have never been able to watch Rise of Skywalker a second time.
Wow. Okay, I actually enjoyed it way more the second time than the first time, but whatever.
I couldn't finish it.
Wrong podcast. We'll do that another time.
Yeah. We'll do that another time. But we're here to talk about Star Trek Prodigy, which is the first time Star Trek has made a show specifically for kids. Now, the Star Trek, the animated series, ostensibly was a Saturday morning cartoon, and the idea was supposed to bridge the gap a little bit. But if you go back and watch Star Trek, the animated series, which I recently did, the show is it's actually more science fiction than the original series in a lot of ways. And there's some pretty heavy ideas. And I think that they were still just gearing it basically to Star Trek fans. But this is the first time that Star Trek has done a show with Nickelodeon. That they made this with Nickelodeon. specifically with the idea of attracting kids. And you know, I wasn't against the idea. I wasn't super excited about the idea, but the first time they released the theme song with the video, the protostar flying around, I was like totally sold. I was like, I want to see this. It's super cool. And I thought the pilot was great. But we'll get to individual episodes in a little bit. But basically, you're starting off overall feelings about how you felt coming into this. Like, what were your expectations? My expectations were maybe this will be neat, maybe this will be fun, but I probably won't like it a ton because it'll be geared towards kids. And I love this show. I loved Prodigy, and in a lot of ways, I think it's one of the strongest things Star Trek's done since it came back. Starting with Sarah, what were your expectations?
I really, really thought, especially because they had already released Lower Decks and they made it very clear that Lower Decks was for adults and Prodigy was for kids. I honestly believed, especially because they got Nickelodeon involved, I was like, okay, they are making an honest to goodness kids show. And to be honest, I find Prodigy more watchable than Lower Decks because, as we discussed before, I'm too old to keep up with the speed of dialogue that happens on Lower Decks. And so even though I love it, it's also very tiring. I could never binge it because my brain would just hurt. So the fact that I find Prodigy more watchable, like because the characters aren't speaking as fast and stuff, you know, it surprised me. But I really was expecting, like, I have not seen all of the animated series. It's the only Star Trek that I have not seen all of. And I was never a fan. It just seemed like a kid's show to me. You know, even though there were certain standalone episodes that I really liked, it was like I had to slog through the ones that weren't like that. And so I was expecting very much, for all those reasons, a solidly children's show. And I almost didn't watch it. And then of course, you know, I was curious. And I was just like, oh my God, this is everything that you would want an animated Star Trek show to be.
Yeah. Issa, what were your expectations? I mean, I kind of made you watch this, right?
You totally made me watch this, and I'm so glad you did because I loved it. So my expectations, I'd seen the previews and stuff, and it was just one of those things where I hadn't really. Okay, so my expectations was that I hoped my kids would like it. That was sort of like where it began, and like I have two daughters who are 8 and 13, and I made the 13-year-old watch Next Generation, and by made, I mean like literally like you are not allowed to do anything else except watch it. And that did not, you know, it went over okay. She liked it fine, right? I made her and my wife watch it. And it was like, you know, it's a good, we followed an episode guide. We only watched certain episodes, and we got to the season 4 premiere, the whole Borg thing, and then everyone liked that, but then didn't want to watch anymore. So we made it to there, and then there was low interest in continuing.
Interesting.
So that's where it gets good.
Yeah, well, they liked it fine, but then after that, they were less. We had like whatever. I mean, I understand. I'm literally forcing them to watch the show. They would rather watch Gilmore Girls or something else, again for the 1000th time. And so they, you know, that was like sort of where we ended with Star Trek. We watched like the Whales movie, and they love that, of course. So I was hoping this was like a way to get the kids more excited about Star Trek. That was really my only hope for the show. And then when we're ready to talk about that, I will tell you how that went.
Well, I think you could get into that a little bit,
okay,
because I do think that that's interesting because, you know, like I'm not a kids guy, you know, whatever. So I don't have any kids to watch this with, but so I spent a lot of time sitting there thinking, oh, this is brilliant because it works for kids and it works for adults. And then I'd start to wonder, wait, is that way too Star Trek for the kids to get? And then I remembered I watched Star Trek when I was that age.
Yeah.
So
okay, so this was the takeaway, right? So started with both kids, 8 and 13, turn on the first episode. I understand that they said this was a thing aimed at kids, but the first, honestly, 2 episodes are not aimed at kids at all. It was a complete disaster. so there were a couple problems, and I'm trying to organize this. But the first one was it didn't look like any cartoons they liked, right? The three favorite cartoons in my house are probably Sonic the Hedgehog, Pokemon, and the Miraculous Ladybug, which is a great cartoon if you haven't seen it. And it doesn't look like any of those. It looks kind of weird, like it's not like I don't know another cartoon that really looked like this. So there was that. I know this is a ridiculous thing to be critiquing them on, but for the kids, it didn't look familiar enough for them to like it. And then the plot doesn't really kick off until the third episode when they're actually like on the ship and doing stuff. So the first two episodes, it's like, do you really want to watch these slave kids in a mine? Like that was not attractive to my kids at all. So it really, I felt like, reminiscent of your comments about Discovery, that it could have started on episode 3, and they could have maybe just had a couple quick nods back to what happened before. But so I started the first episode with both kids. 13-year-old left maybe 10 minutes in, refusing to continue, and the 8-year-old was bored out of her mind and left also. So I kept watching it because I was like, okay, well, I have to watch this for David's podcast. And I was like, I wasn't really impressed with the first couple episodes, but then pretty much once they took the ship, it got good. Like you got to really meet the characters, like the plot was in place, everything was good. That episode where they get on the murder planet, that became really good. But then I brought my 8-year-old back for the third episode, and she was like, but I missed one. I was like, just don't worry about it, just watch it. And now she loved it. So the 8-year-old watched the rest of the series with me, and she really enjoyed it.
I've seen lots of
13-year-old back.
This is really funny to say this, but I've seen lots of pictures online that Star Trek parents are posting of their kids like rapt with attention watching it, saying like that it's doing its job. And I'm like, yeah, that's great, but I'm sure there's tons of kids that are like, whatever, and they're not tweeting those pictures out.
Well, like kids, like I think it was weird because it almost, watching it, obviously I was thinking about kids a lot, and it just made me feel like whoever wrote it doesn't have kids. Like, I don't know if they do or not, but it didn't seem very aimed at kids in a way of like, I'm going to draw in kids. It was just like the main characters are kids, which definitely helps kids relate to it. They probably should have had one human kid. I think that might have helped a little bit. They probably should have, I don't know, whatever. It was, I don't know what else they could have done differently. Just getting to the plot faster, I think, would have been good.
Well, I do think that part of the idea from the beginning was that there was no human, that it was the first Star Trek show with a crew that was all alien completely. And look, kids aren't going to get the fact that Zero is a Medusan, which is a deep cut reference from the original series. Like, like that's, obviously the thing is, one of the things that's funny is Prodigy, everybody talks about all the Easter eggs and stuff that's in Lower Decks, but Prodigy,
oh yeah,
oh my God, there's so many Easter eggs and little things, and like you can't even do them all, like, in discussion, but whatever. Anyways, so but and I get, Sarah, you already said that you were sold on it. Were you sold right away, or did it take a couple episodes for you?
At this point, I'm pretty much used to, I think that it's a strategy. I think that the Kurtzman group, the people who are sort of deciding on the overall feel, I feel like they are very much fans of the slow burn. They did the same thing with Discovery. They did the same thing with Picard. And I feel like I'm not really a fan of the idea that you have to grab an audience right away. I feel like with all shows that you might be even a little bit interested in, you should give it 3 episodes. And then if after 3 episodes, you're not into it, cool. But like, I feel like, and I think of The Expanse. So many people said that about The Expanse. And I honestly feel like it's because people just don't have the attention span to really think, okay, character building, world building is happening here, and I'm going to follow it and see where it leads. So I do feel like it was a feature, not a bug. And I was, all for figuring out. And, the first episode for me, like when I hear somebody saying that kids, I was just like, are you kidding? Like those kids are so cool looking, like the purple kid with the cool hair with the like galaxy eyes. And I love the fact that they've just taken the character design to, DEFCON 1. Like they were like, all right, we now have total freedom. We don't have to worry about makeup or prosthetics. We can do whatever we want, and have created some really unique characters. And so I feel like, it's one of those things that might not grab kids right away, but that, there are just as many things in it that if I were a kid watching this, I'd be like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah.
So
Now, the show was created by Dan and Kevin Hageman, and they are brothers. And there is kind of a brothers throwing shit at the walls kind of feeling to it, which is great. And they made Troll Hunters before for I believe it was Guillermo del Toro was an executive producer on that. And so their experience was Troll Hunters, as far as like having done a thing. I don't know what the process was for them coming in and pitching it, but it's clear that they are massive, not just Star Trek nerds, but you could tell that, them casting Janeway and putting Janeway in here, like, they deep cut Voyager. So the entire concept of the protostar is from a random line of dialogue from Harry Kim in one of the episodes of Voyager, where he kind of throws out the idea of a protostar drive to get him back to the Alpha Quadrant. And then they basically tell him, you can't do that. It's not going to work. But think about that. This whole show is built off of Harry Kim throwing off one line in Voyager, and they built a whole series off of this. And then, not just that, and we're going to assume everyone's watched, you should have watched the show if you're going to listen to us talk about it. But, and then the fact that they're bringing in Chakotay and Janeway and all that's great. And of course, we'll get into the individual Easter eggs and all the different shows, because one of the things that's really neat about how they did this show is that, each episode came with online. I don't know if you know this, Issa. I don't know if you saw this.
I did not know this.
But each episode online, Kate Mulgrew would do like a thing on Twitter where she'd talk about the lesson of the episode, or what they were trying to say, what the lesson for kids are. And I just knowing that, they were doing that, it kind of gave me goosebumps every time I'd watch it, of like, oh, that's really neat. It's a cool little thing. And they would say like, oh, the lesson this episode is you have to trust your friends, or you have to be there for your friends, and all that. And, it was really cool. But let's talk about the fact that from the beginning, before we really get into episode by episode, how did you guys feel about bringing Janeway back as a hologram and doing all that? I thought that was great. I was really excited to see Kate Mulgrew back. I know Janeway's from my hometown, and so I have like a little bit of a extra thing for Janeway, but I thought it was awesome that Janeway was back. Sarah, you go first.
yeah, I think it was a great plot device to make that happen without it being weird. And I think that it's even like the fact that they made her young initially pissed me off, and I was like, why can't she be like an old Admiral Janeway hologram? But I ended up really liking what they did with it, and I feel like Janeway is kind of the perfect captain for what they were trying to do. Like, she's very like maternal, tough love. Like imagine like that working with Picard. Like, he would not know what to do with this sort of ragtag group of young cadets who are not actually cadets. So Janeway was kind of perfect.
Yeah, he should not be teaching. No, there's no way Picard would be the hologram for the kids. Like, Picard Day cannot be forgotten.
Yeah, I thought it was great. Voyager is my least watched Star Trek series. Like, I have definitely not seen the whole thing. But she, whatever. But she's great, and she worked perfectly on the show. I was really glad they gave up that fake cadet thing, because I thought the idea that they could trick the hologram into thinking they were cadets was a little silly, and I was glad they didn't really go hard on that. So that was good.
Yeah, and there's kind of a meta thing going on too with Kate Mulgrew, because she had very young kids when she was doing Voyager, and she's talked many times about the fact that she felt like she neglected her kids because she was working all the time for doing Star
No.
Trek. And yeah, and so she said, she said many times over the years before Prodigy was even a thing, that she carried with her a lot of guilt that she wasn't able to be there more for her kids because of the long hours she was doing on Voyager in the first couple of years, and they were able to scale some of that back when Seven of Nine took up a lot of the screen time, right, in the later seasons. But so I think she had a lot of issues with that. So I think it was particularly, I think some of the, when you see Kate Mulgrew talk about doing Prodigy and how much she loves it, I think that's a lot of it too, and so I thought that was really neat. Yeah. So anyways, let's get into the episode. So Lost and Found Part 1 and 2 premiered together as one long 45-minute episode. As far as of course, the neatest thing for me was when they get the comm badges and they're able to start communicating with each other, and they have like the, hey, I can understand you, and that was kind of one of the neatest things. John Noble playing the villain. I'm a huge Fringe guy, so I know most people know him from Lord of the Rings, right? But and we'll talk more about whether that villain pays off or doesn't pay off well later. But that one of the neat things that kind of came into this and took for the whole season for me to figure this out was, there's a lot of things that if you watch Prodigy early on, you're going to go like, well, that doesn't make sense. How does this main kid, oh God, what's his name? The character's name. Doll.
Or
Yeah, Doll. Like at first I was like, well, how does he know about Federation worlds and how does he know about all this? And of course it gets explained 6 episodes later that he was living on a Ferengi ship, and which we'll talk about when we get to that episode. But things like that, like I didn't understand, like the protostar has been there for 17 years and the timeline didn't make sense. But then you realize once you get into the show is that there's time travel involved, and that at some point the protostar got thrown back in time and got hidden, and that's why it's there. And one of the things,
wait, the protostar went back in time? I didn't catch that part as being a thing.
Yeah, because it was there they were searching for it for 17 years. So
yeah, but does that necessarily mean it went back in time or it just got lost?
Yes, the timeline, like we'll get to that when you get to the end of the season. But yes, we're pretty sure that it started out, that it's now back where it's supposed to be, but it got sent back in time, is basically. So, and we know this because Janeway's looking for them, that they haven't been gone that long. Like, but in the real time of the protostar, I think it may have gone to the future and then gone back to the past. But we'll find out. But what's cool is that we're finding out, we have to wait to find some of these things out. And one of the things that I think is great about the Kurtzman era of Star Trek is that there's a lot of things that nerd boys that are worried about canon go, well, that doesn't make sense. And they always explain it. You just have to give them time. And so it's with Prodigy was, I was just trusting that they were going to explain this eventually, and they were going to get there. And so, but yeah, so
I never care about that stuff ever.
Yes.
In fact, what drives me crazy is like people who are like, well, Marvel always makes sense. It's like Marvel literally just makes shit up all the time and makes up ways in which things are connected. And because they are bound by 0 laws of believability, they can make up literally anything, and they regularly do. And it's always shocking to me, the people who complain about canon inconsistencies in Star Trek will bring up Marvel, and I'm like, oh my God, it is so easy to write. It would be so easy to write for Marvel, like, because they just write themselves out of every single hole that they've ever been in. It's hilarious to watch. Anyway, I digress. But the point is that I don't care about canon at all. It just, when it meets up and it makes sense, I'm like, cool. When it doesn't, I'm like, maybe it'll make sense eventually, but I don't care. And I'm very happy this way. And I wish more Star Trek fans would live like me.
I feel like I'm somewhat in the middle there. Like I don't mind I don't mind when stuff's not canon for a good reason, like I'll take good story over maintaining canon, but it bugs me when
Like
I can't think of
Cybok.
an example.
We don't really need to have Cybok be canon.
Yeah, exactly, that kind of stuff. But like
that never happened.
The most obvious example being the Star Trek prequels, I feel like they actually changed a bunch of stuff that made the original movies worse. And I feel like as long as you don't do that.
Star Wars, you mean?
Star Wars, yeah. Star Wars prequels. They, yeah, I know. We talked about it earlier. I don't mean to talk about it again, but just like, they changed things to make, that just made the next movie make less sense. And that was just weird. You know what I mean?
So what did you guys think of this as a pilot? Because I know like John Ordover, who used to be the Star Trek books editor, he said that he thought it was the strongest pilot since where no man has gone before in Star Trek. Like he loved it. Like he was on Facebook all over that day, like about how much he thought it was a great pilot. And when I asked him what he thought about why did he think it was such a strong pilot? We had this whole discussion that to him, it felt like it was in the Star Trek universe, but it was a new and original setting. And it was something that we hadn't seen before, and that it felt fresh in a way that some of the other pilots seem to be checking boxes. Like, we got to do this in our Star Trek pilot, and we have to set up the crew, and we have to set up this and that. And where it just came to it from a different perspective. What did you guys think of it as a pilot, Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, my only concern when Discovery came out, and then because Discovery did so well, they're like, okay, we're going to make all these other shows. The only thing I was concerned about is, I just hope that it's not all run by the same teams, and therefore they're going to just look all the same, going to be all the same. We're going to have, 5 different Star Trek Discoveries. That's what I didn't want. And so I was so glad to be so wrong about that, because every show is different and really different from each other. I love that. I absolutely love that. Like, they're like, we're going to take this and we're going to be as creative as we can with it. And, it's a completely different team that's doing that than's working on Lower Decks. They're doing a completely different thing. Even though obviously there's going to be some crossover with Discovery and Picard that they've hinted at and stuff, it still feels like a very different show, which I love. So I really love the fact that this, is its own entity. It is, it feels very Star Trek to me, and yet somehow they managed to make it totally like Star Trek on drugs for children, Star Trek on mushrooms, and I love it. It's visually just incredibly saturated with color, and it's just beautiful. I love it.
And I personally, and I don't know, I think I might sense hesitation from Issa because of what you said about it should have started with episode 3. I like that they didn't find the protostar until the end of the episode, that, we were mostly around the characters and getting a view of this new world. However, I do think there could have been a way where you could have jump started it or kind of done that in reverse, or like, had these kids start with these kids like finding the ship and then like going back to their story. However, I liked it the way it was. So, but Issa, you definitely didn't like the pilot as much as episode 3. So
I didn't really care for the pilot at all, I will say. Like I didn't think the stuff that I ended up really liking about the show wasn't very present in the pilot. If I was, if I had my magic change everything I want to the way I want it, pen or whatever, I would have started on the ship with I've forgotten everyone's name. The progeny. What's her name? Whatever.
Gwen.
What is it?
Starts with a V.
Gwen.
Is it Gwen?
Gwen.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. okay, so I would have started with her in the brig. They're on the ship, and you're just kind of like, we escaped. I'm definitely not going back there. You know, what do we do with her? She helped us escape, maybe, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think anything before that was necessary, especially for kids. They don't need to know why the bad guy is the bad guy necessarily. You know what I mean? Like I that's how I would have started. Like, kids just like a bad guy in shows, and you don't necessarily need to explain too much about the bad guy at the very beginning.
This is hilarious because you basically want to start Prodigy exactly how I want to start
Discovery.
Because I want Discovery to start with Michael Burnham arrested in the shuttle.
Right. Totally.
It's so
clip that. You clip the beginning.
We all have against character development. Like,
No,
the beauty of those first episodes is when you watch the whole thing, that journey that they're on, and the fact that they end up at that planet, and the fact that they end up at that or that asteroid, where they're like, it sucks here, I don't want to go back. It has so much more weight, where you actually feel that for them. You're like, I don't want you to go back there either. It sucked over there. Don't go back there.
It should be pointed out that I want that start for Discovery, not for Prodigy. I like Prodigy the way it is.
So I think,
however, I'm not saying that I don't want all those parts of the story being told. I just want the story to start at that point, and I want us to come back to those things.
Exactly. I'm sort of saying the same thing. Like, I think in terms of like grabbing people in there, they could have launched it in a way where it was easier to watch with your kids. So, but I will say that I did like, you know, there were parts of the thing that were good, like when the trader, the slave trader guy brings the cat, and she's like, you know, don't ever bring us anyone this young again. Like, that was like nice. I don't know how they would have done that otherwise, but there was a lot of like, we fell through the hole and we found a ship kind of stuff that was like kind of hokey, and I could have lived without that, you know, like whatever.
Right.
And also, why couldn't, you know, you have all these questions like, why couldn't the bad guy just have taken the ship right away? Like, it seemed like it worked and was just sitting there the whole time. So those are the kinds of questions that come up when you don't start later. But also, I want to say that there's like a general writing rule where you want to start as late in the plot as possible. You know, that's kind of like one of those, like, you know, writing 101 things that, you know, obviously you can ignore sometimes, but generally you want to start as late in the plot as you possibly can.
Yeah, and by starting at that point, at least for me, the reason why I wanted to start Discovery at that point is because it starts as a mystery, and you start in the middle of where the story actually starts.
Yeah, I agree with you completely.
So that to me would be bad writing. That would not be good writing, because the beauty of the first episodes of Star Trek Discovery is you're like, what is going on? And your mystery is you're given mystery, and mystery is a good thing. You want that stuff. It would have been like every other show. It would have been like every other show if they started on episode 3 and then they told episode 1 and 2 in flashbacks, and it would have been so boring. So I feel like you guys are totally missing the fact that this is a good thing.
Well,
I'm sorry, I'm adjusting myself
here. So
Discovery told a lot of story in flashback, you know, like all the Spock stuff and whatever. There was a lot of flashback, so I can see how you wouldn't want to add more flashback. But also, it was my takeaway from season 1 of Discovery was it was just too much Klingon stuff. And clipping out the beginning would have helped with that a lot, I think. That, you know, whatever. I'm glad we all ended up loving it, so it worked out fine.
It worked out fine.
You know,
so episode 3 is where it gets all Star Trek-y. We're on the ship, and this episode was where I was like, oh yeah, because, you know, there's all kinds of intense science fiction and that's where I was like, is this going to work for kids? Because they're traveling close to a star. There's all kinds of like weird science. They're getting pulled in with the gravity. But I think what works is they're balancing that for adults and for the adult Star Trek fans, for making it feel like Star Trek. And then there's the inner dynamics of the kids and the crew, which I think is what appeals to the kids. At least it would seem like to me. Now, you said you got your 8-year-old back into the room to watch that episode.
Yeah.
And am I right? Was it the characters? What do you think?
It's 100% the characters. She doesn't care about the science stuff. Like, I pause to explain the gravity thing and she doesn't care. You know what I mean? Like, so it was like they did a great job. The show deserves like super special commendation for like explaining just enough of some of these basic concepts of either science or what the Federation is, or what, just explaining stuff. They balance it really well where it's not ridiculous, but they give you enough that at least kids are like, okay, cool, but my daughter didn't care about that at all.
Well, and look, if you look at the idea of what they're doing is like trying to introduce Star Trek to a new generation and to kids, the idea that in the third episode, you have a hologram turn on and say, this is the Federation, this is Starfleet. Right. And it makes sense in the story that these kids need to have the Federation, Starfleet explained to them, just like the audience,
it's amazing to me that, for decades, people have been asking, what Star Trek should I start my kids on? What Star Trek should I start my kids on? And every time people in the groups and forums ask this question all the time. And the answers are wildly different. People are like, don't start them on Voyager, no matter what you do. And some people are like, absolutely start them in Voyager, start them on TNG, start them on the original series. And like, you just get a wide variety of responses. And finally, it's like, no, this is the primer to have kids watch. Like, I'm very excited. Somebody asked me this a month ago. What Star Trek should I start with my kids? And I'm like, well, you could do it this way or you could do it that way. And I'm like math gifting over here where I'm like, there's multiple ways to approach it depending on what your needs are and the age and everything. And I'm like, no, this is the show. This is the intro show for the kids. And that makes me very happy.
I would do Star Trek 4 into Prodigy. That would be my recommendation.
Well, what's really weird is I have my friend Nate, who I play basketball with every week, wanted to get into Star Trek. He and I we go to movies together and we see all the Star Wars movies together and everything, but he'd never watched Star Trek for a couple months ago. And he decided, because he's really OCD about things, that he was going to watch in chronological order.
Oh man. Wait, in show chronological order or in real life?
Time, yes. So he has a chart that he's using.
Oh no.
Has all the episodes by year, and he started with Enterprise.
Oh man.
The two seasons of Discovery.
No.
Then an original series.
That would be so confusing. Oh my God.
Is he enjoying it?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, all right. Hey, whatever.
Now, Nate will tell you that he's an easy critic, that he's not, because when he started season 3 of the original series, I was like, oh, wait, get ready. He's like, whoa, no, dude, it was awesome. And I'm like, okay, cool. Bud.
Yeah.
And he loved Enterprise. So, but Enterprise was his first. So like,
yeah, I guess if you're gonna, you might kind of want to start with the low bar stuff first. Actually, that makes a lot of sense, because if you like the low bar stuff, you're gonna love what's going on.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, the best thing about watching Enterprise first is the joke. The read alert becoming a red alert would actually be pretty funny backwards.
Totally. All right, so anything else on that episode, Starstruck? I thought it was great. I thought it was just really perfect, the way they brought Janeway in, and the idea of her being the emergency command hologram. It's kind of a funny twist on, that she would think that was important because she had a holographic doctor, so if she was and look, it's clear that the protostar was designed to go back to the Delta Quadrant. It was clear that the protostar was designed to be, and the fact that Chakotay was the commander or the captain, it's clear that the idea was, we're going to take Harry Kim's crazy idea. He's still an ensign, but we're going to build his protostar drive. And we're going to go back to the Delta Quadrant, and then something went wrong. But it's like, who else would you put as the emergency command hologram on that ship but Janeway? Right. Yeah. And then that would also give Chakotay a Janeway to talk to, which, it's kind of creepy, but whatever. Anyway, so then the next, another thing, are there any of the characters that you want to talk about? I love Zero. I love that Zero is a Medusan and flies around in a little suit. I was really amazed that came off in the last episode, because that's pretty dark. That's a deep cut reference, the Medusans episode. It's not a great episode of Star Trek either, so to pull from that was great. Oh God, what's the rock creature kid?
Rock,
yeah.
Rock.
Rock is great. Rock is so cute with the and that's a child actor doing the voice. And and obviously Murph is super cute for everybody, but Murph is the ultimate Easter egg. The ultimate.
Because it's stolen from Galaxy Quest. I mean, from the Orville.
No, it comes from a Klingon insult in Trouble with Tribbles.
Oh,
Murph is a Denebian slime worm.
Oh.
Oh my God, I did not pick that up at all.
I didn't
either. Oh my
either.
God.
No,
that's perfect.
the brothers that put that out there on Twitter afterwards.
See, I was just like, oh, they've stolen a character from the Orville. I thought that was kind of funny, but maybe not.
No, Murph is supposed to be a Denebian slime devil. From the scene where Scotty gets in the fight and the Klingon says Kirk is a Denebian slime devil,
right?
And that's what Murph is.
Oh, that's really funny. I did not catch that one.
Yes, so that is an excellent and amazing and crazy deep cut Easter egg. Murph is a great character, very cute. Obviously, the baby Yoda of Prodigy. And
Rock was my daughter's favorite character, by the way. Just
Rock Tack. She's a great character. I think that Jankum can be he's the Tellarite. He can be a little annoying because of the whole talking funny to be funny for kids. But Gwen was a great character, and I think basically all the characters were fun, and each one of them had something that is really sweet. And we'll get to Rock's big change.
That was amazing.
One of the best things in the show.
Yeah.
And one of the best episodes. But yeah, I mean, I think all the characters were great and super fun. So, and then 4 was the Murder Planet. Episode 4 was the Murder Planet, which is called Dreamcatcher. And that was their first away mission, and that was great. Now, Issa, I'm sensing you have thoughts on that episode.
Oh, that was when the Star one was good. The Murder Planet episode was kind of okay, these guys are serious, this is gonna be straight up Star Trek. This is you come to a planet, you're seeing things that the planet is convincing you to see to get you to stay. I mean, that's Star Trek, I was very impressed. And I also want to point out that the episodes are really short. They're 20 minutes long or something. And they compress them so much, but it's still really good. You could see how that would have been a 42-minute, or whatever original series or Next Generation or whatever TV show version. They have the same amount of stuff happening. It's just very condensed.
Yeah, and then they have another Marooned on Planet, the Terra Firma episode. I don't remember much about that episode. That's the one before the break. And before they took the break for Discovery. And I will say this, that I kind of wish they had let Prodigy kind of live on its own and finish out before they did Discovery, but I understand that they want to get to Discovery because they've had a lot of animated stuff. So, but we're getting into, before we get back to Prodigy, think about this. We're going to finish Discovery season 4. We're going to have Picard season 3 and Strange New Worlds before.
Picard season 2, right? There's only been one Picard, right?
Oh, wait, Picard season 2. Sorry.
I was did I miss a whole Picard season?
No, they're filming 3 right now.
Okay.
That's what screwed me up. But I don't really remember much about that one before the finale. Does anybody have any thoughts on that one?
Which one was that? Refresh my memory. I just watched it.
Where they they get they have to work together to get Gwen. I think Gwen is separated from them. But it's been a while since I saw that one because I haven't watched it since it was first.
Was that just part 2 of the Murder Planet one? I think it was, right?
Yeah. I guess that's what you.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're right. And then, so then we come back from the break, and then this is the first real big with that Kobayashi Maru episode.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Now look, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan is one of my all-time favorite movies. If I'm sick and I can barely like be awake, I put on Wrath of Khan. Wrath of Khan is a movie that if forced to, I could probably quote from beginning to end. And so the Kobayashi Maru, not only did they do the Kobayashi Maru, but they used the map from Balance of Terror on the screen.
I didn't notice that. That's funny.
Which is my favorite episode of the original series. So of course I caught that. And of course, using the cameos of all
yeah, that was great.
Yeah. My only problem with that is I didn't understand why Odo was at navigation and whatever, but I just yes, don't overthink it.
It was just they really wanted someone from Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
And they wanted to give the actors who we've lost like a tribute to. Now I know I'm sure there's nerds out there that have found where all those episodes came from, but I'm sure I'm not the only one that when you were watching it, you recognized some of the lines of dialogue.
Oh yeah, they were all they just stole dialogue from other episodes for sure.
Yeah, and I know that there's somebody made a map where each line comes from this one, comes from that one. I loved that Spock was in an original series uniform, not the Discovery version of it, but very clearly an original series uniform. I love that Uhura was there. Gates McFadden recorded new dialogue for it. So she did a lot of the heavy lifting there. That was great. Seeing everybody was great. And the idea that Dahl would, do the Kobayashi Maru like 100 times is kind of funny callback to Lower Decks, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Also, they dropped a nice little Douglas Adams reference in there. Something, I forget what it was exactly, but something was like the 42nd time or whatever. Yeah. I bet you don't know how many times I've done this so far. The answer is 42, something like that. That was cute. But yeah, there were just so many. There was just so much in that. It was great.
Sarah, what are your thoughts on Kobayashi Maru? The Kobayashi. I think it's just called Kobayashi.
Yeah, no, it was great, and it's harder for me. Like, I genuinely, when I watch a show like this, they just blend together and become one big story. So it's harder for me to pick apart specific episodes. But because of the Kobayashi Maru thing, obviously I remember it, and yeah, it was great. And I liked that as often as Star Trek has returned to this idea, that they managed to do it in a fresh way. And part of that is the Dahl character, which I wasn't a super big fan of him the first couple episodes because I felt like he's just sort of the generic cocky male. And obviously his whole journey is to be less cocky as time goes on, and that unfolded. And I didn't expect that I would enjoy it unfolding the way that it did as much as they did. So somehow they managed to, in a show without a lot of tropes and without a lot of stereotypical characters, they managed to have one that was kind of almost there, but then they still managed to make him his own, and that made me so happy.
Right. Well, and one of the things that's great about, by the way, of all the Janeway, Kate Mulgrew, like, this is the lessons for the episode. It was funny. As soon as I finished this episode, I was like, "Oh no, I gotta go watch this one," because she's talking about the Kobayashi Maru. So I remember I immediately went on Twitter to try and find it. I didn't do that with all the episodes, but it was cool. And obviously the Kobayashi Maru, is like a huge part of the Star Trek lore and the mythology, and so to see, and it also played on, Discovery recently did an episode where they, talked about the no-win scenario and it. So I think there's a really cool synergy there as well. Now, episode 7 is one that I had a little bit. First of all, I've never been a huge Ferengi fan. Like, even though Deep Space Nine is my favorite, and I thought there were the one problem I had with Deep Space Nine is there were far too many Ferengi episodes. Like, a couple of them were very, very good, but overall, like, having, so when I was like, oh my God, we're getting a Ferengi episode of Prodigy, I thought it was good to show where Dahl comes from, and it's a part of that whole thing where I said you got to trust people, because throughout the series I was like, why does he know stuff about Alpha Quadrant stuff? And then when I first saw the Ferengi, I was like, well, what's a Ferengi doing in the Delta Quadrant? And then I had to do the stupid Trek nerd math in my head, and I was like, well, we don't know how long Ferengis live. And if they live for a really long time, they could spend 70 years traveling to the Delta Quadrant because they think that's where the money is. But then if she has Dahl on her ship, she's going to be telling Dahl all about where she came from.
Wait, were they even in the Delta Quadrant? Like, I forget they started somewhere.
In the Delta Quadrant, yes.
Did they start in the Gamma Quadrant and then go to Delta, like when they first used the drive? Because they did some kind of travel at some point.
I might be wrong about that, but I thought they were in the Delta Quadrant. So
at some point they definitely were.
Yeah.
I don't remember. It's been, I think I want to say that they started in Gamma and that's where everything was happening, and then they went to Delta Quadrant. I don't know, whatever. Yeah. Neither here nor there. I'm also not a Ferengi fan in general. But I think it gives Dahl some like an interesting backstory. Like, he was raised by a Ferengi and sold as a slave, like that. It gives him some story there.
Yeah, and I thought his heartbreak over thinking that he was going to get help from an old friend and all that was really good. And so it's funny because there's an episode that I groaned at when I realized what it was. Again, like, I was happy with it in the end. Sarah, are you?
Yeah,
are you pro or anti-Ferengi?
It depends on the episode. Like, obviously, I was super happy with Deep Space Nine to bring more depth to Ferengi, because in TNG you had entire species who were created as a joke. You had to meet the needs of the particular episode, and so they ended up creating certain alien races that were the joke. And it's weird because in today's society you sort of, it's like they created the other, and you're supposed to be in a Star Trek universe where other races are respected and other and you have characters openly making fun of which on one level I'm like, it's realistic, and on the other level I'm like, it just feels icky.
I should note that I like Ferengi characters, and I thought Quark and Nog were excellent characters and excellent things. I just didn't like episodes that were built around comedy stuff.
And that's part of the problem with episodic nature, because that happened. Like, whenever TNG had like a Riker specific episode, I was like, bored, and stuff like it. It's just what happens when you have episodic TV. But anyway, I really liked the fact, and I was surprised by the fact that they showed, in a children's show, they had complex relationships with each other, with the Ferengi character and Dahl, and then of course with Gwen and her father. Like the fact that they show betrayal and the father choosing his mission over his daughter. It's realistic, and I like the fact that when children's shows do that, when they have good character development, genuine, realistic, heartbreaking character development, it was just genuinely surprising. Like, I like the fact that multiple times while watching this first season, I was like, wow, this is impressive to see in a kids show.
Yeah, well, and the found family aspect of it was done really, really well, where the crew really came together.
Yes, so good.
Now episode 8 to me is Prodigy's best episode. And
That's the time fracture, I assume.
Yes, Time Amok, which is a great title, of course.
Right. The reversal.
Great reversal. And because this was so Star Trek, the fact that there's like time anomalies and there's you know, there's a mystery and they're disjointed from time, and I don't know if this is going to go over the heads of most kids, but at the same time, you know, like I said, I watched regular Star Trek when I was a kid, and but Rock's storyline in this episode, that she was there, we don't know how long she was there. She could have been there for years by herself, teaching herself the science because she had to save her friends and doing all that. And, you know, she's still going to come off looking like a child or sounding like a child to us because we don't know how long it takes her species to grow or whatever. But this idea that she was there for years is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And she uses that skills in the last episode as well. Like, but it's so great, so Star Trek, so perfect. When I watched this episode, I was sitting in my living room and I literally felt like standing up and applauding for the producers because of how freaking great this episode was. And I know I ran to Facebook and I posted to a post that I think Sarah was the only person that responded to it, where I said, "God damn it, Prodigy, great job. This is everything you meant to do." And I was thinking, I really hope people will go and watch Prodigy because of it. And of course, probably Sarah read it. Right.
You underestimate your yeah.
But
this
episode,
Rock made me cry when that, like, I think it was only like the second or third episode. Sorry, I'm backtracking, but like when Rock was given the option to eat whatever she wanted, and she's like,
Totally.
"I'll just have my Stockholm syndrome meal."
Right.
Yeah.
Totally. But yeah, the time fracture episode is like, you know, if there's like a most Trek episode possible award, that episode should get it. It was absolutely perfect. And I was shocked by how short it was. Like, again, it could have easily been a full length episode and dug into more stuff, but it was perfect. It was really well done.
Yeah, they got a lot of story in there. And I have Dog Showdown going on behind me, just so you know. I'm trying to manage that. But yeah, I mean, they got a lot of story into 24 minutes. It's crazy. Yeah.
And it's like the intro is like almost 2 minutes and the credits are also, so it's really like 20 minutes tops, you know, like there's not a lot of time in these episodes.
Well, I'm guessing that the animation on this show is just brutally tough to do. And it looks beautiful. There's times when there's just ships going and things going on where like it could be you wouldn't know the difference between live action and, you know, and what's going on when there's not characters on the screen. So I think that's one of the reasons why we're getting the disjointed Prodigy. So because I think that they have to take a lot of time to do that animation.
Has it been successful? Did either of you guys know what the ratings are like? Is it going over well?
I mean, it was renewed, so
yeah.
And I saw something about it being among the top streaming shows.
Oh, great.
So yeah,
it's weird though, but because it's doing really well ideally, but like when I talk to my friends who are Star Trek friends or Star Trek fans who are friends, like almost none of them have seen it. And so, you know, I felt are you not
in Star Trek shit posting?
I am not, Sarah. I go there every once in a while. Sorry, Tots.
Come to the dark side, because you find so many more Star Trek friends. It's the thing. I've met so many friends from, you know, Star Trek friends from that group.
Oh, I know. I mean, online, that's one thing. Like I see a lot of people posting about it especially on Twitter, because I follow Star Trek Twitter pretty closely. But but you know, I don't know. Sarah, why don't you tell us a little bit about the reaction you've seen from fans? Because I haven't seen a lot.
I mean, the reason I brought that up is because, you know, with Star Trek shit posting, they will have a official thread every time an episode comes out. And so, you know, because it's like a spoiler thing, right? So you want to make sure that you contain everything within one thread. And it's one thing that the group does really well. Like, we really appreciate it, especially given the fact that admins are obviously, you know, just volunteers. But every time there's a new episode of any of the series, there's a spoiler thread. And it's a really great thing, because when you're done watching the episode, you can go to the group and you know that that thread will be there, and you can kind of discuss it with everybody who's there. So they did this for Prodigy, and you know, it was a great way to like decompress and talk about it. And you know, that's why I was like, you know, if you want to get a sense of what other fans are talking about, it's a great place to be.
Where would you find this group?
Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah, Star Trek shit posting. I have looked at it quite a bit, because there are some really funny things.
It can also be a really horrifying place. It really depends on the day. You know, it's part of the beauty of it.
It's the
Anything can
internet,
happen
yeah,
at any
sure.
time.
Right. And I do know that specifically, well, like, and we talked about this in the Lower Decks episode, but there's evidence that some people in the Kurtzman circles definitely are reading.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Specifically shit posting, like you can tell that, like, that there's evidence that they're lurking, and that they know things, and every once in a while, like, you definitely can see in the modern Star Trek that there's lines or dialogue. There was something on Discovery where I was like, oh, they're specifically trying to shut down nerds from freaking out about this one particular thing. I can't even remember what it was, but they're definitely.
Was it when the guy got killed after trying to mansplain to Michael Burnham? Because I enjoyed that personally.
Yeah, that was one of them. Yeah, where the guy's like in the process of explaining to her, and then the asteroid
And he explodes.
just explodes him up. Yeah. Yes, that was season 2, like early. Yes, that was one of them. Yes, for sure. And then the series the first season ended with Moral Star parts 1 and 2, and this is where the Diviner kind of comes back around. Now, to me, one of the weaker things of the show, and it's sad to me because I like John Noble a lot, is the Diviner's plot when it got revealed. I actually liked the storyline. I liked what was going on with the story, but at the same time, like, you know, and I guess if he hadn't loaded his weapon into the Protostar, because a lot of people are saying, well, why did he just let the kids go back to Starfleet? But he hadn't loaded his weapon or whatever it is onto he needed to get the Protostar first. So now whatever like virus or whatever thing that he has loaded on there, which we don't know what it is yet, but and then I like the idea. I do like the idea that this was a first contact gone bad. You know, that, you know, and we don't know any details on that. We don't know if it was Chakotay on the Protostar. We don't know if it was Janeway on Voyager. You know, but we know that they met Starfleet, and 50 years later, they had descended into civil war. My guess is that when we get closer to more answers, that there will be a specific episode they're referencing, since obviously, like, it took a little while for people to find the Protostar being referenced by Harry Kim, and you know, and then someone found it. So, you know,
I wonder, have you? I mean, we don't know the timeline. I hadn't really thought about that in advance, but like, we know that it was like 50 years later, it got destroyed after contact, but we don't really know when that was. So it could be anywhere. I think
we know he came back in time.
Yeah.
So we don't know when the first contact happened. The first contact may not have happened yet.
Right. It could be in the future, or whatever, our future, whatever.
The future of Predator. Yeah. And the timeline, we know that they are in the, and here's where it gets tricky. Okay. With the last couple episodes in the timeline, we think that Prodigy is in the Lower Decks timeline post Nemesis, right? Because the uniforms are similar to the ones they're wearing on Lower Decks. However, if you look closely at when Janeway says, "I'm coming, Chakotay," if you look at her comm badge, it is the same comm badge she was wearing in the Voyager episode Endgame, where Janeway came from the future to speed up Voyager's return home. Because originally it took Voyager like 40 or 50 years to get back, or 30 or 40 years to get back to Earth. And then she came from the future to get them back quicker. And that comm badge is the one she was wearing in the far future of the final episode of Voyager, not the Lower Decks era one.
I will be the first to admit I did not notice that, nor would I ever notice that. But I'm glad that you noticed that and told me.
I thought it was fishy, and then I explored videos online where people far nerdier than me explained it. So I did notice that it was different. I just didn't get all the details until I did some digging. So, and the name of her ship is the Dauntless, and it also has an experimental drive of some kind. So Janeway's rocking some weird technology that would change everything. So
well, see, I hope Sarah's not wrong here, or I hope Sarah is wrong. I don't know which one I hope, but I hope that they haven't de-aged Janeway. You know what I mean? Like, because her cartoon wise, she looked about the same age as the end of Voyager. And so I hope that that's when it takes
no,
place.
It's definitely an older Vice Admiral Janeway.
Yeah.
But the issue is, what timeline is that Janeway from, and where are we going with that? That's the weird thing that we have to deal with. And that would make things different because there's no protostar or slipstream drive in Picard, right? Or in that era. So,
because at this point we can just transwarp across the galaxy, so it doesn't matter, right? They don't need the drive anymore.
well, and that's the thing. Oh, you mean with the spore drive with Discovery?
Well, I was trying to make a joke about the the newer Star Trek movies where they can just beam across the galaxy.
Oh yeah, well, let's not talk about JJ.
Yeah, I know it's your pet peeve, so I was just spoken.
But what I think they're setting up is that, much like the spore drive had to get explained away to 900 years in the future, I think the protostar and the slipstream drive on the Dauntless is all stuff we're going to have to wait and figure out what they're doing there. But what's cool is I think they're doing something really cool there.
It's probably something nicely thought out, I would imagine.
Nicely thought out. We have some time to think about it. But personally, that's all neat stuff to me. And if you can get nerds making 25-minute videos about comm badges on YouTube, then you're doing your job as a Star Trek creator.
Totally.
Yeah, because so the thing is if it's entertaining for your 8-year-old, and your 8-year-old likes rock, and then will someday finish Next Generation with you because she's gotten into Star Trek, hopefully.
Yeah,
hopefully, right? That's the mission there. But if you can get the nerds to talk about the comm badges for 25 minutes on YouTube, and then have me discussing this with you guys, like the nerdity of the comm badges, this is great Star Trek. That's what you want to do, right?
Perfect, right? Right on brand.
Yeah. So now we have a whole complete season. We've talked about. I freaking love Prodigy. I think it's great. I think it's one of the best things that the Kurtzman era has done because of its double mission. I love titles that have two meanings. I love stories that have two purposes. I love, and I just like that we're getting more and different kinds of Star Trek all over the place. Like, Lower Decks didn't work for me. Like Issa, our friend Anna, who fucking loved it so much to that point. I'm happy for her. It doesn't have to work for me. It can work for other people, right? And so I'm just stoked that we're getting more different kinds of Star Trek. And in a lot of ways, we're in a golden age for it, because the way Paramount, Paramount is trying to do this, they're making sure that we have a new Star Trek every week.
Yeah,
that's fucking great.
They don't They don't want people to unsubscribe in the off
Yeah,
season. It's great.
there's no other reason to be on the Paramount Network, But one thing I want to talk about the cartoon thing real quick. So, as everyone remembers, I'm the guy that hates cartoons, and I don't hate cartoons. What I meant was cartoons let you be kind of take some shortcuts in storytelling. Like, for instance, in Lower Decks, there's that really long scene where Boimler gets eaten by the drooling slime monster, and it's just kind of funny, and it's pretty like, whatever, low common denominator humor. And in a real show, in a live action show, you wouldn't have had that moment because you couldn't have filmed it. Prodigy doesn't have that problem. They don't really, there's nothing that they hand wave over as a cartoon that I mind at all. So it doesn't bother me at all that it's a cartoon. I think it's fine.
I think the animation looks beautiful.
Yeah.
The space stuff looks great. The theme song is amazing. Michael Giacchino, I don't know how they got him to do. He must have been really stoked to do it. I love that it ends with classic Star Trek notes, and the way they incorporated Janeway, and at the end, really great stuff. Well, now, what do you guys feel now that since we're in spoilers? How do you feel about this whole like Chakotay was the captain of the Protostar, and I'm on my way?
What happened to him? I'm very like, what happened? Because she's like, I'm coming to get you, and it's like, oh, but he's not on the ship. Where is he?
I would imagine
what does that mean?
I would think they're going to go into like a rescue mission kind of mode for the next season, or at some point to try to find the original crew.
Yeah,
you could assume that they're dead, but probably they're stranded somewhere and something.
And then what happens to our crew if Starfleet shows up?
Right.
And my thinking is that, the Janeway ship, the Dauntless, can only go so fast. It's going to take time to get there. So at some point there, she's going to be able to communicate with the Protostar, but they're still going to be on their own to do the mission. And I'm assuming that they're going to be like, we got to go find Chakotay.
David, take a water break. Drink some water.
I know. I'm sorry. I definitely am coughing, and that's bad. So, but yeah, I mean, I love the Chakotay stuff. But I mean, I wasn't the biggest Chakotay fan as a character, but and it's not Robert Beltrane's fault. I just didn't think he was a greatly written character, but I like where they're going with this.
Yeah, there are a lot of options of where this can go, and I trust them to go somewhere good, because so far it's been amazing.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where they go, and I think it all comes. I think this story, I think a lot of it comes down to characters, but that's going to be the new mystery, and then what's going to happen with the Diviner like being crazy in their on their ship too, because and that was crazy that I did not expect the show to go so dark.
Yeah,
with the Medusan revealing, with Zero, and then of course, like setting up the whole thing with Gwen not being able to remember. So
yeah.
All right. Excuse me. Final thoughts on Prodigy, and then we'll talk about the upcoming shows and what we feel about that. So, Sarah, final thoughts on Prodigy, the first half of the season.
I just love it. I don't really have anything else to add. I love that it's dark and complicated and visually beautiful. I mean, it just hits every note for me. I'm very happy about it. I really can't even think of anything that I would wish that they did differently.
Issa, I made you watch this.
What was that?
I made you watch.
Sorry,
this.
You did. I'm so glad. It was great. I agree with Sarah. It really couldn't have been better. I have my little nitpick about the first season of the first episode, just in terms of grabbing kids' attention, but I thought it was fine for me, and I can't recommend it enough. I think everyone should watch it with their kids or without their kids. or if they don't have kids, they should just watch it. No kids involved. And it was really good. I'm excited to see where it goes. And also I'm excited for like a lot more of this. You know what I mean? Like I love everything. Everything that's coming out is great. It doesn't have to be like, I don't have to, we're beyond the point where I have to compare everything to Next Generation. You know what I mean? That was like peak Star Trek for me, but I don't think about it like that anymore. Now it's just like, hey, there's all this awesome stuff to watch. So that's good.
Deep Space Nine is peak Star Trek, but whatever. Yeah. So,
you know damn well that The Voyage Home is peak Star Trek, okay?
I'm sorry, that movie is called The One with the Whales. Thank you. But I think they should officially change the title to that.
The whale, just the whale. Yeah.
It's The One with the Whales. Well, look, so moving forward, I'm a little antsy about Picard season 2 because I don't like that they're coming back to our era in it. And I'm also not the biggest Q fan, but I'm open-minded to it. And
I love Q. I love him so much. I'm so excited.
I feel like Q revisited has a lot of potential. Like,
I agree with that.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we live in this era of remakes or whatever, and some of them are just terrible, but a lot of them really take into account what should have been better and manage to incorporate it. And I feel like Q has a lot of potential there.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, we're talking about Star Trek Q, not crazy political people Q. I just want to make that clear. Yeah. There's no
Star Trek Q.
There's no confusion. I don't want to get quoted out of context here somewhere,
Well, speaking of online Star Trek, Tony Peake, who's a science fiction writer, posted a thing yesterday saying, like, what conspiracies would there be in the Star Trek universe? And it was funny because
great question.
Well, Greg Cox, the author, he was great. He said he said, well, did you totally know that Spock's father is also a Romulan commander? And like, so there was a lot of jokes about the casting, but one thing I noticed is, like, I kept ruining everyone's joke because several people posted the universe is flat. And I found that recent physics article where they proved that the universe is actually flat, and that they, with a lot in it, but that the actual shape of the universe is a flat shape. And I was like, that's actually true. That's science. And then people were giving me shit. But anyways, so yeah, Picard. But I'll tell you the one show that, and I said this probably last time, but the show that I'm most excited about is Strange New Worlds. I cannot wait for Strange New Worlds because I think that's going to be the most original series. Like, I love that they're expanding Uhura as a character, and Dr. Mabenga's back. After 2 episodes of the original series, we're going to maybe get an explanation for why he left McCoy to do so much work by himself. But this is probably going to be, we're going to find out why he's a Vulcan expert, and I still think one of the greatest moments in the original series is when Mabenga's like, all right, here's what you got to do. We got to smack Spock really hard, and then he's going to be better. It's just like, I'm a Vulcan expert, smack, that character's coming back. That's great.
Cool.
And Pike is just my absolute favorite captain. So Pike in Discovery season 2. I thought he was perfect, so I'm very excited for Strange.
Captain, I mean, has there been enough for him to be your favorite captain? Is that like the band that recorded like a 7-inch and then broke up can't be your favorite band?
Well, he's gonna have Strange Worlds to prove it.
All right, we'll see.
Well, then it would be Cisco after that, anyways. So
of course,
yeah.
Even though the correct answer is Picard, as we all know. So whatever.
Well. Yeah, well, he's got 2 more seasons to prove himself. So, and the rumor is that season 3 of Picard is going to be bananas.
Okay,
I hope so. Bring it.
Well, and because I think it's very clear that they're ending Picard's storyline there.
Yeah.
So, so of course they had to do Q before then. So, which is great. Yeah. And but for me, Strange New Worlds, give me episodic Twilight Zone-y episodes of Star Trek on the Enterprise with Captain Pike. I'm all for it.
I'm sure it'll be great.
Yeah.
By episode 3 at least.
All right. Any closing thoughts for Star Trek fans before we go? Where can people find you if they want to find you? If you want them to find you, do you not want them to find you? I don't know.
No one needs to find me, and they don't want to find me anymore, so it's fine. You can't find me. I'm unfindable.
Well, they can find your music out there.
They could, yes. Well, let's see. I can't promote Spotify, so yeah, I don't know. Whatever, somewhere. YouTube, I don't know.
Yeah, good, clean fun. Great hardcore band. Very sarcastic.
I probably won't like it, but you know.
College is a great song.
Okay.
That's a great song.
Well,
you should be very proud of that song. I should tell you, Issa, the other day, I have students that work cleaning tables at bars in the morning, you know, as a vocational job. And I was at my students were at a bar cleaning tables in the morning, and I was in the bathroom and I heard this bell ring. And I was like, God, that sounds like the Salad Days bell.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that's a very specific, weird sound. And then I walked out of the bathroom and they were playing Minor Threat Salad Days. But it was so funny to hear that bell because I was like, God, that sounds like the bell. And it never occurred to me that Minor Threat would actually be playing there. So
that's really funny.
You're one of the few people that would really get that reference for me.
Yeah, awesome.
Anyway, Sarah, you're a Facebook person. You're not really on Twitter though. At least as far as
I am on Twitter, and I spend about 5 minutes a day on Twitter.
Okay.
Which is obvious by my content. But yeah, I'm more of a Facebook person, unfortunately, because I actually hate Facebook, but it's where everybody is. So I'm kind of
that pretty much sums up Facebook, you know.
Yeah.
Hates it, but it's where everyone is.
The only reason why Facebook exists is because they don't really have any real competition, because you know, they're such a bad product objectively. They're just so bad. It's like a government service now.
But it's like
you feel like you're in the DMV half the time.
People like me are just too lazy to use a new service. That's really the problem. Like I understand.
Well, everybody has to kind of do it at once. Like when Google Plus came out,
right.
I feel like Google Plus came out at the wrong time, because if it would have come out like around now, you know, or right after, like it was proven that Facebook kind of messed with the election and was very irresponsible about all of that, I feel like people would have. But you know, you have to have a critical mass in order to make it work.
I think you're giving people way too much credit, myself included. Like I just am too lazy to. I will, if Facebook were to turn off, I would just never do social media again. Like I'm not going to go through that of dealing. Like it's such a net negative on all of our lives. Like I'm not going to like ever use Twitter or anything else. Like I just don't want that, you know. Like, but I'm already on
Twitter
Facebook.
has purposes. Yeah,
sure. Twitter's useful for some stuff.
And as far as Star Trek goes, Star Trek Twitter is a great way to follow theories, rumors, those kinds of things. Like Star Trek Twitter, like, because if you just hit follow Star Trek and then you get like all the posts, but you know, that's really good. That's how I find a lot of the, you know, there's been some really great memes lately but the Book of Boba Fett.
They mostly originate in Star Trek shit posting, and then they end up on Twitter, just so that everybody's clear here.
Okay.
Yeah. That's true. So yeah, you can find Sarah at Star Trek shit posting for sure. All right, so folks, we'll probably next convene after Discovery. So I'm hoping to add some people to our panel, and but we'll see. I was amazed how many people were like, "I'm not caught up on Prodigy. Sorry, man." Whereas Issa was like, I got it. I will watch the whole damn thing.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I love Star Trek. I'm just, you know, between being just generally busy in life and whatever, I don't always have time to keep up with everything. So it's great to have an excuse. I love it.
Yes, it is. All right. So I guess everybody live long and prosper and all of that stuff. We'll be back for Discovery, I'm sure, because I so far I'm really loving this season, and I have problems. There's things I wish would be different. I don't like it I still think Discovery season 2 is their best, strongest season, but there's a lot to talk about, and I just had my mind blown realizing that the Federation president from Discovery is the same woman that played Helen Smith on Man in the High Castle. She was incredible on that show. So now I'm like twice as impressed by the Federation president. But that's here nor there. We'll get there. Discovery. See you folks then. Thanks a lot.